Life Audio.
Hello, and welcome to the Confessions of a Christian Alcoholic podcast. I am your host, John Seidel. This is your home for real stories, radical vulnerability, and remarkable comebacks. In the end, this podcast is a place for the desperate, the downtrodden, the destitute, and especially the drunk. But it's also a place of hope and healing. I know that firsthand because I'm the Christian who became an alcoholic, not the other way around. Today, I've found sobriety after decades of struggling. But more importantly than finding sobriety, I found Jesus. My prayer is that as I interview people just like you and just like me, along with professionals in the fields of trauma, faith, and addiction recovery, you will find the peace that is available to you through Christ on the other side of whatever you're going through and whatever addiction that might be. Because let's face it, we're all addicted to something. So welcome. Let's get radically vulnerable as we explore what it looks like to be on this journey of messy sanctification. We'll be right back after this. I've said this before and I'll say it again, and that is, you don't have to have a rock bottom moment to realize that your relationship with alcohol or substance or food or whatever needs to change. And today's guest, ironically, had several, maybe you want to call them rock bottom moments, but the moment that made her stop the refilling of prescription medication that she was addicted to was not the ER visit where her mom had to fly in from out of town to, come take care of her. The moment that led to her finally turning the page on her addiction has to do with a moment of absolute beauty, and where God met her in a scene involving a bumblebee and a flower. And oh, it is such an incredible story. I don't want to fully give it away because I want her to tell this story, but I think it's important to realize that God can meet us in the rock bottom moments, but he can also meet us in the small moments of beauty. Today's guest is Ericka Graham. Ericka is a former Division I basketball player, played collegiately. She is a seminarian, or I should say a seminary graduate. She preaches regularly where she lives down in Houston. And her story is also a good reminder that even if you have the quote unquote picture perfect life, you can still struggle. Like for so long, Erica's husband was a professional football player, and she was the wife of a professional football player. And I think a lot of us would look at that and say, oh my gosh, like you have everything at your fingertips. Like, why would you need this? Why would you need this substance? But yet addiction doesn't care. And so I think there are plenty of you that will be able to relate to Ericka's story. I think it's a story that is important and needs to be told. And what you will hear in this story is that addiction, the substance, whatever we're turning to, is not a precision numbing agent. It's not a scalpel. It is a chainsaw. And so when we think we're taking this whatever, we're using this whatever in order to get and numb that one specific thing, what we don't realize is that it doesn't do that. It numbs so much more. And so that comes into play in the story of the bumblebee and the flower with Ericka. And maybe you'll cry like I did because I definitely started tearing up at the story and at that realization that alcohol, drugs, food, it's not a precision numbing agent. Listen, before we get to this, just a reminder that if you are doing dry January, if you know someone who's doing dry January, maybe you're thinking, all right, I'm just going to give up alcohol or whatever for a month. Don't do it alone. The book that I wrote that's titled the same as this podcast, Confessions of a Christian Alcoholic, is available for 30% off plus free shipping through the publisher, which you can go to christianalcoholic.com, christianalcoholic.com, and you'll be able to find the link there for the book. But don't do dry January alone. The book can be a guide for you, and I've written it in that way. Final thing here, and I don't want to make a too big a deal out of this, but what I think is so encouraging about this conversation with Ericka is that, like, Ericka and I, theologically, we just have differing thoughts on things, right? Her seminary is very different from the seminary that I graduated from. But I think when we find things that we can agree on, it's really important to have those conversations. And so what Ericka and I have found so much agreement in is gospel-centered recovery and what it looks like to incorporate and to shoot for Jesus, really. And so I'm encouraged by this conversation. I'm encouraged that her and I can come together. And I mean, we don't get into theological topics in this, but I just wanted to point that out, not in the sense that because we're different, but because we have found this important point of agreement. And I consider Ericka a friend. And I think after you hear her story, you'll see why. So without further ado, Ericka Graham. Ericka, thank you so much for joining the podcast. This is a real treat for me, given who you are and where you are from. My wife jokes that I have like a Wisconsin radar. And sure enough, the person that introduced us didn't even like remember that connection. And then you hopped on the phone and I was like, she's one of my people.
Well, I see right now you have a Wisconsin Badger football helmet in your background. And my husband was a Badger football player. So I was like, wait, did you put that out just for me? And you're like, no, that's there all the time.
And not like, don't sell yourself short. Like, not only was your husband a Badger, Division I athlete, but you, Ericka Graham, were also a Division I Wisconsin athlete.
I was. When that comes up, I always tell people, don't Google my stats. I sat on the bench and walked on, but technically I did have a roster spot, so I'll claim that.
Come on. Yes. So I really am excited about this conversation. I've been looking forward to this one. And I think, I talked a little bit about in the intro, but, I think it is great. Like, it's no secret that you and I probably come from different perspectives on certain issues theologically. And I think it's important that when we can find issues that we agree on, that we talk about that and celebrate those. And I think this is one of those issues when it comes to addiction, when it comes to recovery. And so I'm really excited to hopefully model in some small way what this can look like. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. John, I've thought about our initial conversation when we talked about doing this podcast a couple times. And I think you're right. I think you and I might have some theological differences, but really those containers, our differences are what are keeping us trapped as a society, right? I mean, you look at the division, like we have so much in common. In fact, when I was getting introduced to you, I was like, is this just me in male form? I'm confused, like his story is from the OCD to the addiction to Wisconsin. I was like, wait, what is going on here? So I love that we can talk about all the intersections that we have because there's so many.
Oh, thank you. That's funny. I mean, if people are watching us, they would see that you are not just me in female form. Much more voluptuous hair. That just exists.
I get podcast ready.
Well, you kind of alluded to some of your the similarities in the story, and that's really, I just want to go there right away because I think your story is so powerful. It is so interesting, and it has so many unique facets. And so I would love for you to just kind of take us back. You have an addiction story, but it goes deeper than, I hate to say just that, right? But as people who have addiction issues, we know that it's always deeper than just the addiction. So I'd love for you to kind of walk us through from the beginning.
Yeah. You know, my earliest memory of compulsive behavior, which addiction, if anybody isn't familiar with, it is a compulsive ritual, really. It's a compulsive act. But my earliest memory of compulsive behaviors, kind of unwanted results from compulsions, is in third grade when I started washing my hands obsessively. And kind of had an early OCD-ish diagnosis. I don't think I was formally given the diagnosis of OCD, but I went in to get help for my hand washing, and I was also performing religious rituals at the time. Got re-diagnosed with OCD at the age of 30, and that's when I really entered a specific kind of treatment for OCD specifically. But I say all that to say that my compulsive behavior began at a young age. I was always kind of an all or nothing type girl. You either do it or you don't. I was that way with basketball shooting. I had to shoot, I believe it was 1,500 shots a week. And I
remember you telling me this, yes.
And I would count them, and was just so hard on myself if I had a bad session where I'm going to go shoot 100 in the driveway and I missed a majority of the one. It was just like, not a self-hatred, but like a disgust. So I was always just hard on myself. And what's interesting is my parents were loving, did not struggle with OCD, didn't really understand why I was so hard on myself. But that's kind of my earliest memory of compulsive behaviors. I went on my first diet when I was 15 years old. And I did it kind of casually to lose a little bit of weight and get faster. I noticed that the girls that were running the 800 were smaller than me, and they were beating me. And so I kind of, in a healthy way, decided I'm going to clean up my diet and maybe get a little healthier. And it worked. I got a little bit smaller. I got a little faster. And I always say, I think sometimes in addiction, this is true. It works until it doesn't.
Yes.
And so what worked all of a sudden became extreme. Just like in drinking, just like in any kind of addiction, all of a sudden it became out of hand where I was restricting myself all day, binging every night, compulsively exercising, which I now know is called compensatory exercise or exercise bulimia. It's even been called. But because I wasn't throwing up, I didn't think I had a problem. But I would wake up and go on these long runs to punish myself from the binge before. So I started engaging in kind of addictive, out of control behaviors around food. I wouldn't say I was addicted to food. I'd say that, again, I had these compulsions around food. And then later in college, it became with a prescription medication. And again, it worked until it didn't. And I started to abuse that. So many times in addiction, I think like what you kind of convince yourself that, are you normal or are you fine?
Yeah.
Right? Like you live in this gray until all of a sudden your life is proving that this is a real problem. And it was in, I had been dating my college boyfriend, Ericka Graham. He got drafted in the 2010 NFL draft to play for the Houston Texans. I was actively addicted to this prescription medication at the time. And when I moved to Houston, my identity was challenged because all of a sudden, I later became this Texan wife, but I didn't have my identity was not just in Christ. It was in all the things I did, and that wasn't there anymore. I wasn't the basketball player in Houston. I wasn't, whatever job or internships or friend groups I belonged to. I was starting over. And I found myself lonely and abusing this prescription even more to the point where I was having to go into the ER regularly. And at that point, it was like I could slowly start to accept this is a problem.
Yeah.
And it's amazing the amount of denial you will engage in when you're active in an addiction.
Oh, yeah.
I kept saying like, well, that was the last time, right? That's the last time that'll happen. and then I'm back in the ER at 1 a.m. And there was one moment in particular where I was at Ben Taub Hospital late at night by myself, and my mom had to fly in from Wisconsin to come get me. And that was probably one of the most sobering wake-up calls that this was not working in my life, and that I had a severe addiction to this medication. And I think underlying that addiction was a lot of my food issues and exercise issues and body image issues that needed to be resolved. So healing was not just from the addiction, but also from the things underneath, as you mentioned. So I don't know. I could probably keep going on, but that's kind of a zoom out look into how my life has been compulsive in different ways.
Oh yeah, we're going to dive in for sure. But I want to go back to even the beginning before we even get into some of the addiction stuff. As you said something that I think is interesting, that maybe some people don't quite fully realize can be a symptom of OCD. And you talked about religious OCD, and we call that in our line of work, we call that scrupulosity, which is the fancy word.
Right.
Describe what scrupulosity is.
Yeah.
And what that looked like in your life.
Yeah. Well, scrupulosity, I think I actually say scrupulosity, but maybe you say it right. You might be challenging.
Well, you have it, so you probably say it right.
So scrupulosity is actually, people think it's just religious, and scrupulosity actually can be moral. It can be not wanting to harm others. There are lots of ways, even politically nowadays, you can want to be like this perfect citizen morally, or defend justice perfectly in your life, or be untangled from systems of oppression perfectly. And so anytime there's kind of this impossible perfection around morality, which often shows up in religious contexts, that can turn into OCD if it is creating rituals, if it is creating a pattern of rumination towards certainty. So an example might be, like, when I was young, it was showing up as I was making promises to God, but they were quite arbitrary. So I would say, God, I promise you I don't know, won't step on a crack as I'm walking to gym class. Yeah. So they're kind of these little ways to show my obedience to God, which, looking back, is really sweet and sincere. Like, how wonderful and earnest that I wanted to please my maker at such a young age comes from a pure, beautiful place. But the understanding of it is really this chase towards being good. That I think that's why Christianity and grace is just the game changer for me. And that's that, like, we don't get to earn this, no matter how hard we try. And boy, did I try to earn my salvation, if you want to. Yeah.
What when that stuff started happening, were your parents noticing any of that?
Yeah, I think I had confessed to my mom that I can't remember what it was, but I had justified some kind of ritual I was doing as I told her I had promised God, and that I couldn't stop promising God things. And so I remember being distressed about this loop of making promises to God throughout the day. And I also noticed that other people weren't doing that. I think theologically, a theme throughout all my life, I felt like other people could move on quicker.
Oh my gosh, Ericka. Yes.
Like, I'd be like, just like, well, if this is what we're supposed to do, then, like, why would we do anything else? Like, why is anyone caring about anything else right now? So it was just, again, black and white. And I think the theology of grace has just been such a game changer, in that I don't get to control other people. I don't get to control my own life. It is, just as recovery is, surrendering. And that's why I think I feel so grateful that I have a 12-step program, or I know there are many ways, as we talked about earlier, many programs to practice surrender in community and truth-telling in. But I think we're all struggling with uncertainty and surrender and addiction. And our addictions just, like, make us look at it more intensely, which I'm so grateful for.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting thing you just said there, right? And I think maybe we'll come back to it in more depth. But But yes, right? Like I have gotten to the point, like Paul, I think, where you say, where you're thankful for the thorn in your flesh because you know, oh my gosh, like left to my own devices without this thorn, like I am just a lost person, not in the trite, like churchy way to say it, but like I just would be so utterly rudderless, if you will. And it's like that thorn, that little thing, it almost in a sense acts as your rudder, right?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think go back to that one night at Ben Taub where I actually had some auditory hallucinations where I had voices in my head. And I was aware that that was not reality, which was almost good and bad. Like I was aware that this is not real, but it is to me in this moment. And I think that's given me so much empathy. I said in a sermon recently, like when I see an unhoused person on the street corner, I know what it's like to be caught in an addiction if I perceive that they seem to be caught in either mental illness or addiction. But I also know that what separates me from them is a lot of things that I can't control and didn't earn, like a social support network, like perhaps less trauma in my past, resources to get help and to get on my feet, So I think another gift of it is that when you start to give yourself grace, it's a lot easier to give it to other people that are also there.
Oh, this, people who are watching, and I think they've seen this is my newest tattoo, as of this recording, hopefully by the time this comes out, I'll have 75 more, says he today, I tomorrow. And it was a saying by the old desert church fathers. And the story, the legend is that, one monk came to, the padre and said like, hey, did you hear about, Brother Lawrence? Like he, fell away and left the convent or whatever, and the father looked at the guy and said, he today, I tomorrow. And it was just this idea of extreme humility that says, I am one decision away from being that person. I am one slip. I am one fall from being Brother Lawrence,
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what, like, you see those people and you're like, now we kind of have this humility that has to say that, not that just could have been me, but man, that could be me. Like if I am not careful.
Yeah. And I am them and they are me. That I have that.
Yeah, right.
Me. I have that in me now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to go back before we get, and if at any time I ask a question, you're like, take a hike. I don't want to answer that. That's fine.
No, I'm an open book.
But before we get more into the prescription addiction, is there anything looking back, and maybe you've kind of talked about this a little bit, like, there's some anxiety and OCD obviously in my past, but there's also some unhealed traumas. Like, was there anything that you felt other than the OCD that kind of paved the way for some of your later addictions?
I've talked about this with my therapist a lot. And the only thing that I can kind of pinpoint is that when I was 3, I was diagnosed. Actually, I wasn't diagnosed. I'm going to have to edit this. But when I was 3.
Not going to edit that. No.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, you're right. This is going to be good exposure for my perfectionism. Leave all these mistakes in.
There you go.
That's right. But when I was 3, I got really sick and my blood would not clot. I was in preschool at the time. And I was taken to the doctor. It started with a bloody nose. It just wouldn't stop. I had bruises all over my legs. And I ended up getting a bone marrow sample. Like they tested my bone marrow because they thought maybe I had aplastic anemia or leukemia. And it ended up being that I don't know the exact medical terminology, but something with my white blood cells. Mom, was it my white blood cells or red blood cells? She's somewhere. I don't know. Anyways, either my white blood cells or my white blood.
I love that. That's staying in, by the way.
Okay, my mom is like,
meatloaf.
Mom, she's babysitting my baby right now who's sleeping. She knows the details. But anyway, so I had this kind of medical trauma that I was in and out of the hospital for several months. It was a big deal. My preschool class wrote me notes and letters. I had visits from my preschool class. My brother was pulled out of kinder because I could not get another illness on top of what I had. And at the age of 3, I just remember being aware of death. You know, I was in a hospital unit where other children didn't have hair.
Yeah.
And I remember asking questions about why she didn't have any hair and why did I have these long pigtails still. And that didn't really seem fair. And it just became, I think, kind of the big existential questions that we asked in life, I was exposed to. And I was picking up on that this isn't forever. And so whether that triggered some of my future anxieties, I also know they struggled finding a diagnosis for a while. It was kind of a rare thing that happened, and that mono had attacked at the same time as another virus and shut down my blood cells so that they couldn't clot and plate. So all that to say, there was uncertainty. And I'm not sure if that kind of triggered anxiety around uncertainty in the future or not, but it is one significant event in my life that I reflect back to as possibly something. Again, like when you have mental illnesses, it's so hard to decide if there's a cause or not. But that was definitely life altering for me. And I was 3, so I remember bits and pieces, right? I remember the shot that went into my bone marrow because that was painful, and my parents had to leave.
I've heard. I mean, it's like this. It's like a freaking 12-inch needle or something.
Yes, I remember the nurse told me to look at a teddy bear that was on a window, and I kind of bent over, and my parents were not in the room with me. I remember that. I remember sweet things. Like I remember watching Lady and the Tramp late at night with my mom, who stayed with me at night. So I have some kind of memories from this. And then the rest of my memories, I think, are probably just stories I was told from that time.
Yeah.
I also do remember doing a Ninja Turtle craft in the craft room with somebody who didn't have hair.
How can you forget that?
I know.
Turtle.
I mean, yes.
But
so,
yes, I mean.
So all that to say, I think this early experience definitely shaped part of my worldview growing up.
We'll be right back after this. Yeah, I think that's interesting, especially as someone who, I have a son who at 4 started limping around, and we were like, what? Like literally just wakes up one day and like limping. He can't run, and he can't hop, and he can barely walk. And we take him to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician, I think you as a mom will really appreciate this. The pediatrician goes to my wife. He's good. I think it's behavioral. Like he's either making it up or he's milking it or whatever. And my wife is like, the mom instinct is like, I don't think so. Yeah. And so we book him an appointment at Children's Hospital, and sure enough, like he has a tumor in his leg, right?
Wow.
And that ended up being benign, and it went away through some high dose NSAIDs, but he still talks about that. Like he remembers. He'll just randomly say, "Daddy, remember when I used to limp around? Like remember when I had my tumor?"
Yeah.
And so he was like a year older, but but he remembers that vividly. And so I pray, my prayer is, Lord, let there be no residual effects from that. Not necessarily the tumor, but from the experience. But yeah. It doesn't shock me at all that maybe there's something there. And yet, and I think, people who are listening to this, like, I don't think I'm not on a hunt for people to have trauma that's not there. But I do know that, and I think you understand this too, like dealing with stuff in our past to get to the root issue is always a good idea. And I'd rather dig stuff up and there be nothing in the dirt than to just leave a little, mine under there that you're just going to walk over one day and have it explode.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think, what happens to us shapes us. We know that from being human. So, of course, everything in your life is a part of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to get then to, and, feel free to kind of be as detailed as possible. But, you talked about this prescription drug. When did that enter the picture? And what was it, by the way?
I always am a little bit leery to share what it was, but I think I will.
Okay.
And that's just for like triggering reasons. It's a drug a lot of people are on. And everyone I know who takes it does not abuse it and does it responsibly. And it's been life-changing for them.
Right. Just like alcohol. I mean, my wife can drink alcohol responsibly. She doesn't abuse it.
Yeah. So I took an insane amount of Adderall.
Okay.
Adderall, Vyvanse, amphetamines, prescription. Yeah. And it started innocently, kind of wanting this for my life. I do think, I am someone who has ADHD probably. Like I probably do check that box. I was definitely probably seeking it a little bit at the time. It was my sophomore year in college when I started it. And I had already been a compulsive exerciser. So again, that's kind of, some people listening to this are probably like, I hate exercise. How can you not stop exercising? Again, exercise works for most people, right?
Yeah, right.
And so I started on a normal dose and just kept wanting more and more and more. And
can I dig into that? Like, when did you start realize? Like, what was it like to want more? Was it? Hey, one time you took maybe an extra dose and you felt a little something different. Like, what was it that you started craving there?
It's twofold. One, I think it gave me some temporary euphoria and kind of invincibility. And it is an amphetamine that in high doses made me feel great until it didn't. But the other fold, and I think this is probably 90% of the story that I've come to realize probably more recently, is that I think I was also taking it as a way to control my compulsive behaviors around food because it is an appetite suppressant.
Right.
So I think I was also I still say think. I know I was also using it to try to get control of my binge eating disorder at the time.
So I want to stick a fork in that and come back. But, you've talked about the eating disorder, and which, by the way, I have a family member who used Vyvanse for the same thing. And, so.
And again, I have yet to meet someone who abused it in the way I did. That's why I often don't share the name, because this drug is a miracle for so many people,
Sure. Yeah. And I I have a whole chapter in my first book about, taking medication in the good sense, in the good way. Right. Like I get, I'm 100% on board. And yet I think what you and I have learned, you can abuse, anything can become an addiction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like people eat their hair.
And pretty soon I was taking obscene amounts to feel normal.
Yeah.
So
on the eating so that started as you started, you talked about being in high school, running the 800, and then that compulsion took over. And so did the food also, in a sense, I know that in my life with my OCD, there's so much that feels uncontrollable. And, I can't stop X. I can't stop Y. I can't stop thinking about this. I can't stop thinking about that. Did the eating disorder, in a sense, was that also a way for you to gain back control in a way?
It's interesting because I didn't wear my eating disorder on my body. So I was a little bit bigger than I am now in my body. I was always within a normal-ish BMI. I think I always wanted to lose 10 pounds or 20 pounds and just couldn't. It was just, I just was unsuccessful at it. And the way I would do it is exercise a lot, not eat, and then at night, like give up and eat everything and wake up in the morning and do the exact same thing. And that way it was like, you know, the insanity of addiction where you're just like, why am I trying this again? This hasn't worked for 5 years.
Right.
Why is it going to work tomorrow or today? Right. But I remember every binge being like, this is my last time. I'm never going to do this again. So the last time I sit down and eat all this food. And then it never was, you know? Eventually it was. But yeah, so I kind of had to treat my, I weaned off the medication. A big motivation for me was childbearing too. You know, I was like, I know I want to have kids someday. And I know I can't be doing this to my body when I'm pregnant. So I kind of knew in the long term, I often wonder if I was a guy, would I have like had the motivation to stop? Because I think as women, like, you know, you might be housing other people who are affected by everything you ingest someday.
Yeah.
So it's got to end sometime. The party's got to wrap up. Though it didn't feel like a party at all. It was a lot of suffering. But all that to say, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Whether I don't know.
I know. Look at
you were answering it so well.
You're gonna have to edit this. You're gonna have to.
There's no way. There's no way.
But so my eating disorder was really. I remember you asked about the Adderall use and why, like, what drove me for more.
That's right.
I think 1, withdrawal, and 2, my disordered eating. That really was, I think, so much of the reason this started in the first place.
So, going back to the usage, like, what did that start looking like? I mean, you talked about ending up at the hospital the one time, but, you know, what did the depths of that look like?
Yeah, I think, like, my husband would kind of joke that I'd been to every ER in town. So, you know how there are, like, these, like, emergency room clinics, like, kind of in, like, strip malls or... I started going to those late at night because I was always aware of how much I had taken. Wasn't really ready to admit that to even a doctor, but was also really afraid that I was going to have like a heart attack because I was in a panic state from all this amphetamine. So I would find myself in a panic late at night. And I don't know why it was late at night. Maybe late at night, like you're just forced to be alone with your body and self. You know, so you're more in your body. I'm not sure. But oftentimes at night, I would go to an ER and I'd get a EKG and I'd maybe tell a half truth about, well, yeah, I take this and this is what I'm prescribed, but I was abusing it and taking more. So yeah, there were so many moments where looking back, it's complete insanity. But at the time, it was like, yeah, I'm going to lots of ERs and I'm having lots of anxiety at night because of this. And yet I still just kind of justified it as, well, it's a panic attack or, you know, giving it other labels and not looking at what it really was.
How were you justifying, if you were at all, how were you justifying taking that many?
I think I'd feel it kind of wearing off. I remember even like opening up capsules and pouring out a little on my finger and kind of licking it. Like having keeping it in my purse, checking multiple times to make sure I knew where it was in my purse. How did I justify it? I don't know. Like, how do we lie to ourselves in addiction? I'm not sure.
It's like the $1 million question.
Yeah, do you know? How did you justify your alcoholism? Like, how did you justify taking one more drink? This is going to be my interview for you now.
Yeah, I know, right? I would say it was a variety of things. I mean, I think one was I'm not as bad as, right? And so, sure, maybe I know I'm drunk right now, but I'm not in the overall scheme of things. I'm not a derelict father. I'm not going out to the bars. I'm not draining our bank accounts. I'm not hiding money, you know.
Yeah.
So that was one way. Like, I'm not as bad as. I think, you know, hey, everyone has their vices. right? I'm not perfect.
Mm.
I think that was another way. And by the way, some of these were like stronger in seasons than others,
Yeah.
right? I deserve this. I work hard. I provide. It's just, it's a, in a sense, a victimless crime.
Mm.
You know, that
Oh,
that
totally.
sense of it. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I was a at home drinker late at night. Hey, everyone's in bed, including my wife. What?
Yeah.
Who cares if I stay up and have 4 or 5 bourbons while watching the Badger game? Like, you know. So I mean, there's just a variety of ways, and then the lies that Satan tells you, you know, on top of that. So, but I'm always curious because I think, and part of the reason I ask that question a lot, I think, is because I think it's good to hear other people's lies, the lies they told themselves. You know, I think part of the heart behind this podcast is to let people see themselves in another person's story. I think, you know, it becomes like a mirror. And so sometimes I think when we hear the lies that other people told themselves, it's like, oh, dang, I tell myself that one too. You know?
No, as you're talking, I'm like, check.
Right?
You're answering my question. Thank you. I will same
well, we are the same person, remember?
Yes, yes. Just whatever John just said is also how I feel.
Yeah. So, by the way, I'm always curious. What was your husband kind of saying? What was, you know, seeing you go to all these ERs? Is he like, you have a problem? Or is he in denial? Or is he like, I can't bring it up? Like, what is his take during this time?
Yeah, you know, I mean, he lived with me. And he was playing in the NFL at the time and busy and on the road and had away games. And actually, the night I went to Ben Top, he was in an away game. He definitely knew. I started staying up really late, like 2 a.m. Not out at the bar clubbing, like at home by myself, unable to sleep because hello. So yeah, he knew it wasn't right. He also loved me, and I don't think he knew what to do or had capacity. You know, that's one thing about addiction is we're so powerless over other people's addictions. So he loved me. He didn't know what to do. He knew something was off, but also I was really good at covering it. I was a like straight A student. I think I got all A's at Rice University in grad school. I was had friends. I also had this big life outside of the part that he saw. So he saw all of it, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because I think with my wife too is like, sure, like she knew like I wasn't drinking the most healthy way. And I think there were times she tried to bring it up, right? And I shot that down, explained it away or got mad or whatever. And in a sense, taught her, you know, what it felt like to confront me on these things, right? But then also, like, I mean, there were things that I wrote when I wrote my book that she read for the first time because she didn't realize it was the depths of it, right?
Yeah.
The things that I was doing to hide it, and she would see the things that seeped through the cracks, but she didn't see the whole dam that was behind it, right?
Yeah.
Saw some of these spouts coming out. So I think it's a good reminder too, and I bring that up too because also if you're maybe a spouse that's listening to this, is like, I've also heard some people beat themselves up, like, how did I not see it? How did I not know this? And I would say, a lot of times, by the time you see the big things, the night in the hospital at Bentob, like, it's been going on behind the scenes for a lot longer and in a lot bigger ways, you know?
Yeah.
Like, don't beat yourself up.
Yeah. I remember constantly like seeking validation too, that it was okay what I was doing. Like,
oh yes,
I think I'd say like, I have ADHD, right? And I'd read him the symptoms. Like, that's me, right? So like kind of wanting him to say, oh yeah, you need Adderall, you have ADHD, you know? And again, a normal person with ADHD might do really well on a dose of kind of amphetamine, but I was taking it to a next level.
How were you, by the way, I'm curious, like, did your doctors not realize that you were, needed prescriptions more often? Or how does that even work?
I was getting it in other places.
Okay.
When I'd run out early, which I think I almost always ran out early. I'd also try to get, it is a controlled substance. And again, I don't want it to be triggering or give away any ideas for anyone listening,
Right.
but there were ways to get it a little earlier. So I'm not proud of any of that, but I found a way to get the amount that I was using.
Yeah. So bring us to, would you kind of say, and I tell people this all the time, you don't need a rock bottom moment to reevaluate your relationship with any substance, alcohol, Adderall, whatever. But would you say that night where Garrett was away at a game, was that in a sense your rock bottom?
When I decided to change, it was kind of the opposite of a rock bottom. So I will say that night, I think, was the beginning of me ending my denial. So it was oh, this is officially a problem. We can call it that. But that doesn't mean I'm ready to get better.
That is so important. I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah. So it wasn't the next day I woke up and oh, I was sober and living in a sobriety honeymoon. Was not the case for me. But I had run out early and we had gone on a family trip and Garrett and I were in London. And I came back and I hadn't had my prescription for a couple of days. And I was feeling crummy, kind of the withdrawal that comes from taking that amount and not having it for a couple of days. And I went on this walk and I saw a flower and it was hot pink in color. And it was a beautiful day. There was breeze. There was this vibrant garden. And I saw a bumblebee kind of land in the center of this flower and fly around. And I thought about how the fact the bumblebee was pollinating and what a job that was. And I realized in that moment that you cannot selectively numb. And that when I had numbed any anxiety or doubt or uncertainty, I had also numbed so much beauty and joy. And I felt like I had soberly experienced God's beautiful nature and goodness in a moment that I hadn't had access to in a long time. And so it almost was this mystical experience for me where I was oh, I want this. And I can have this. And maybe I even deserve this too.
Oh, got me a little teary there. Because that is so beautiful. And I think I've made this joke before, but it's not, it's a joke, but it's not really, is since I got sober, the amount of pictures on my phone of sunsets and nature and just simple things has increased exponentially. And I think it's exactly what you just said, that when we numb and we go to escape, it is not a scalpel, right? It is a chainsaw.
Yeah, I think it was Brené Brown who said you can't selectively numb. And that was just wow, yes.
Yes. We'll be right back after this. And so then when, you have that, mystical experience, that Holy Spirit moment. And then how do you kind of start crawling out of that fog? And what decisions and steps did you take?
I never filled a script again after that moment.
Wow.
So I know that is not the story of most addictions. It's mostly nonlinear and bumpy, and I've probably been addicted to other things like my phone since then. But I kind of just would take myself in addiction recovery. They say play the tape of all the things that addiction has taken from you, like your peace, your calm, your integrity, your honesty, so playing a tape of all the reasons I wouldn't want to go back there in my head when I want it. And I don't have cravings for it. It actually doesn't tempt me at all anymore, which is a miracle. But even like with there was a time where I had to quit exercising for a while because it was compulsive for me. And I would see people running and I'd think to myself, I got to do that. You know, I don't get to do that right now, but I got to do that. It was fun. It was amazing while it lasted. So, you know, I got to explore this treatment for my ADHD that didn't work. I don't get to do that again because I've shown myself that I can't. The risk is too high. And I play the tape of why. You know?
Yeah. And so I remember you telling me in a conversation that we had, which I thought was really interesting, is that you ended up doing a 12-step program. But it's not the 12-step program I think that people would think. Like you didn't go to NA. You went to Overeaters Anonymous.
Yeah.
Explain that, because I think it's actually interesting when we talk about getting to the root of the issue, you realize that it wasn't necessarily a substance issue as much as it was an eating issue.
Yeah.
Can you explain that? Yeah.
I always tell people like, and I actually haven't, I don't think, shared publicly what 12-step program I do.
Oh, okay.
But I'm open. It's fits perfectly in this conversation. I think going through the 12 steps for me and for my sponsor too is going through the 12 steps. It's taking inventory. It's looking at your life. You're asking the questions and getting to the heart of what is a spiritual solution. And so for me, when I am struggling, it's because I'm not in a spiritual solution. It's not because I didn't do this or this or this. It's because spiritually I am needing a rescue or a refuge. So I think all 12-step programs, like I do know people who have struggled with food, and like I sent one friend to a OA meeting. I was like, you should try it out. And she's like, Ericka, that was not for me. I'm like, that totally get it. It's, again, like so many things, like drinking, like Adderall, like what works for one person doesn't work for the other.
Yeah.
But it is a place where I found to be honest, to tell the truth, to not feel alone in my obsession with food and exercise that kind of undergirded, I think, at least starting my addiction to amphetamines. And then it's also like a place of service where I can do outreach calls for others, or showing up I know helps other people in community. So I think in our modern life, we're so isolated. It's a way to be interconnected because our sobriety is between us and our higher power and really holding each other together. And I think that model is really what I think the perfect Christian church would be too, right?
Yeah. You mentioned higher power, and I think we know who yours is.
Yes, yeah.
Who the one should be for everyone.
We call it higher power, yeah.
Yeah, no. But that's a great segue into, can you unpack the role that, that finding and shooting for Jesus played in getting through these addictions and through these periods of addiction in your life? Because now, I mean, you went to seminary.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of your life. Where and when did that really enter either into or back into your life, and in a real way? And how did it become part of your recovery story?
Yeah, again, I think the theology of grace that really comes from the story of Jesus, is so much of the core of my recovery journey. But also, I once gave this sermon kind of earlier in my recovery about how there is no resurrection without a crucifixion. And so for us to be resurrected into new life, things within us have to die. And that's the theology of the cross. And so for me to live an honest spiritual life that I can be proud of and rooted in, like, there was a lot that had to be crucified within me.
Wow.
And I think that is what the cross is constantly teaching us, is that the only way to a resurrected life is through. And I tried to go around, right?
Wow.
Every time I just picked numbness instead of feeling. I was trying to get around crucifixion and just go to the resurrection. And it never worked.
Wow. That is so good. That is so good. And I think when it comes to that, like, were you, I forgot to ask this early on, but like, were you raised in a Christian home? Like, what was your upbringing? And like, what was your spiritual life, pre-addiction,
Yeah.
during addiction? Like, what did that look like?
So when I was really young, I was really what you would call religious. I just remember feeling really close to God. And again, that might be from that early childhood experience of being sick when I was 3.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But I always felt kind of this personal tie and just knowing that God was with me. And then I grew up going to 2 different churches in my hometown. My grandfather was a UCC reverend, but he was retired. So my mom was a PK. My grandpa was this kind of popular reverend in New Glarus, Wisconsin. You probably know them for
Oh, my alcoholism knows New Glarus.
Yeah, so I got married at that church in New Glarus. My grandfather was the pastor at that church on the hill. It's a beautiful Swiss church. So I'm from a family of Christians, was raised Christian. When I got to high school, there was a church in Madison that kind of had the younger crowd with pizza and coffee and guitars. And so I'd kind of once I was able to drive, I would like go to this other church that I thought was, so much better than my parents' church. And looking back, I mean, I loved all the churches for different reasons, but you probably remember this, it was early 2000s and 2002. And this was kind of newer, at least to my consciousness. And I did some Christian camps in college through Athletes in Action. And so I was always seeking a Christian faith and perspective without really living it, understanding it, or accepting the grace part of it.
Yeah.
Like, I think when I imagined religion, I envisioned all the ways God was mad at me. It was like a reminder of my guilt. Because I didn't...
Which fits with your scrupulosity.
Yeah, I didn't know how to turn it into a surrendering grace. So that's why I say grace changed my life. Like, understanding. And I'm sure I was taught it in Sunday school. Some things, unfortunately, we just have to live and learn the hard way. I'm sure I was taught grace, and I was modeled it by my parents. I have wonderful parents. But I had to really live it, I think, after falling down a couple more times than I had to.
Do you feel like you really kind of grasped that? I mean, I feel like I can say, yeah, Christian growing up, baptized young, all the stuff, but I don't think I really grasped grace until, 3 years ago.
Yeah. I love this quote. This quote from Richard Rohr says, "We cannot think ourselves into new ways of living. We live ourselves into new ways of thinking." And so I think I was trying to think myself into a new life.
Yes.
So
yes.
Think about grace, but I didn't know how to live it.
Yes. Yeah. In the book I talk about, I had all the head knowledge, but I lacked an experiential relationship with Jesus.
Yes.
I knew what to say. I knew what to do. And by the way, you can white knuckle it for a long time.
Yeah. And it's safe in your head, right? Like,
sure.
You get a lot of control up there. You don't have to feel as many things. You get to be intellectually stimulated. Like, I like living in my head too. It's great.
What was it like? How did you, I think maybe there's some people listening to this and maybe they're like, okay, John, all right, Ericka, I'm realizing that my relationship with whatever, prescription drugs, alcohol, food, my phone, TV, is not healthy. How did you, once you finally, you have the bee in the flower moment, how did you then talk about it with others, like with your family, with Garrett? Like, how were you able to get to the point where now, mom's in the other room, she knows what you're talking about. How did that come about, where you were able to say, hey guys, you should know that I've been
I think,
abusing
yeah,
it?
that's such a good question because I think there is some awkwardness in that, right?
Yeah.
I never want anyone I lived with or anyone that raised me to feel like they were the cause for any of this because I don't believe they were, in my situation at least.
Yeah.
So, and like you said, like you wrote some things in your book that's new to your wife. That's kind of awkward too, right? Like some of this like is awkward, and it's because it's kind of supposed to be. You know, the reason you've avoided this so long is because it is awkward to tell the truth. You know, so just like being like, hey, this isn't going to be easy to tell these people what I've actually been doing and how I actually am and what's been going on under their noses. Like that is going to be uncomfortable. And that is probably what kept you in the secrecy and isolation of addiction too.
100%.
Yeah.
I love what you said, and I remember, and I wanted to come back to it, which is, you know, you talked about knowing, you knew you had a problem, right? You were finally able to admit it, but that wasn't like when you woke up the next day and was like, okay, I'm done, right? You know, there's even I have 2 dates tattooed on my arm. I guess I should maybe get 3 because it's like one is the day I committed to sobriety, one's my last drink. But there's a date even earlier than that. That's 2 weeks earlier where I said to my wife, and I said, you know, I was on this spiritual retreat and the Holy Spirit was working on me. I'm like, I'm an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic. 2 weeks later, it took me 2 weeks to hit rock bottom. 2 weeks because then I convinced myself, but maybe I'm not.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I'm good.
I think when you're in the mental state of something, it's so hard to see outside of it. Right? Like, even though it might be clear in a moment that you have a problem, okay, today you're changing, as soon as you're in a different moment, experientially the next day, you can convince yourself of something else.
We lie to ourselves.
Like, even last night, my 18-month or 20-month-old has not been sleeping well. And I'm just like, this is my life. Like, it's just going to be like this the rest of my life. Like, just doom and gloom. I'm never going to sleep again. Now, I know that's not true. But in the moment, that's my whole world in reality.
Yeah. It's funny because there was a guy I was listening to. I was on a conference call, and he was kind of talking about it. I think he was talking about addiction. And he said, you know, in the end, like, we can lie to everyone else, but we can't lie to ourselves. And I thought, I think it's the opposite. Like, in order to lie to others, I have to lie to myself. And I lied to myself for so many years.
Yeah.
And the walls did not finally start coming down until I finally told myself the truth.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we can lie to ourselves for a long time. We can justify things for a long time.
Yeah, that's why they say in program, denial stands for don't even know I am lying.
Right.
Like, yeah, I didn't even know I was lying.
Right. Exactly. Ericka, if someone is listening to this, you know, going back to what I said earlier about, you know, maybe they're realizing, hey, something's off. Like, what would your advice be to them about, like, what next step should they take?
You know, I think in a Christian context, you can look at the fruits of the Holy Spirit and answer it honestly. Is kind of my friend Joshua Carney. He says it's like an evaluation or like a rubric, right? The fruits of the Holy Spirit. Am I living this way? And the reality is Richard Rohr says we transmit the pain we don't transform. So if we are transmitting pain in our life by being impatient and quick to anger and all the things that are not what God wants for us, can we ask ourselves an honest question that, how do I need to change? So I think allowing ourselves space to pray about it, and then also be courageous enough to surrender and try a different way. Because we won't become transformed if we cling to control. And addiction, as you know, it's all about control.
Yeah.
It's I want to feel how I want to feel, when I want to feel it, at what time. Yep.
Exactly. Ericka, if people want to hear some of your messages, if they want to invite you to speak, if they want to reach out to you, if they want to see what you're doing, where can they go?
Instagram, I'm Miss Ericka Graham. The reason I'm Mrs. Ericka Graham on Instagram is because I actually had Ericka Graham, and then I forgot my password for the handle. So it's now Mrs. Ericka Graham. And then I have a podcast called Curiously. You can slide into my DMs if you want to ask me to speak somewhere, or also I'll give you my email for the show notes as well.
Awesome. And I will say, I think we first started talking about, someone introduced us via Instagram DMs.
Yeah, shout out to Holly.
My good friend Holly Tate, who I absolutely love, and is friends with you down there in Houston.
She goes to our church, Ecclesia.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, Ericka, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being vulnerable, for being open, for being honest. I mean, I'm not trying to get it, but I think I love when people say, you know what, I haven't shared this before.
Yeah, no, it was a good stretch for me, and I think some of it I've been afraid to trigger someone, or I don't know. That's probably some of my OCD, to be honest. So it was good for me too.
I think it's great, and I know someone is going to be helped by this. And if you are, reach out to Ericka via the methods that you just talked about. We'll put them in the show notes. Ericka, thank you so much. We'll have to have you on again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And we'll end it there.
Oh, there are so many good things in there. I think, first of all, I love her acronym, denial. Don't even know I am lying, right? Oh my goodness. Is that I'm a sucker for a pun or wordplay like that. So that's great. But to me, I think the thing that I gravitated really towards is this idea: there is no resurrection without a crucifixion. Oh, think about that, right? So often in recovery and just in life in general, healing requires letting things die. Our habits, our false identities, our coping mechanisms, the lies that we've believed. Healing requires letting things die. There is no resurrection without the crucifixion. What do you need to crucify in your life, right? So that something truer can live. And that's hard. Crucifixion is a painful way to die, and killing our coping mechanisms, our unhealthy things that we're turning to, our numbing, it can be painful, right? I talk about in the book that scene in The Great Divorce where the angel is offering to kill the lizard that's tormenting the man. And as the angel starts killing the lizard, the man starts screaming in pain and goes, "My goodness, this hurts so bad. You're going to kill me." And the angel says, "No, I told you that I wasn't going to kill you, but I didn't say it wasn't going to be painful." And friend, I just want to encourage you, crucify and let die those things, knowing full well that it could be harmful, but what is on the other side is so worth it. If this episode resonated with you, anything in this episode resonated with you, what I ask you to do is send it to someone. Send it to one person. Maybe it's someone that's been praying for you. Maybe it's someone who has been encouraging you to do something about what has been going on in your life. And you just want to say, hey, listen, what Ericka said about crucifixion and resurrection, you got to hear this. Or maybe there's someone else in your life that needs to let some things die as well. Go ahead and send it. Obviously, you can rate and subscribe and do all that stuff, but it really, I think, my request is always that you would just share, even if it's 20 seconds of something that stood out to you. Love you all. Listen, I hope you have a great new year. We're going to keep rolling in the new year. Have some incredible things planned, not just for the podcast, some incredible guests, but also, I'm booked out. I have guests lined up and booked and stuff recorded, I think through the first, almost 3 months of the year. And this podcast is hitting so many great topics and it's resonating with so many of you. So thank you. And so we're going to keep cruising on the podcast, but there's also going to be an expansion of this ministry. And that's a hint to you of what's to come. I've called this a ministry increasingly, and there are going to be some things in the new year that make that a formal thing. And there are going to be ways that you can partner on many levels. There's going to be community aspect. There is going to be ways that we can connect. And I don't mean like just me and you. I mean like all the people that are listening and want to go deeper. So excited. I will unveil those to you as I am able. Love you all. We'll talk to you next week. Again, quick reminder, if you want to watch these episodes, every single episode is available to watch. You can do so at The Veritas Daily, theveritasdaily.com. Talk soon.